Well, most men, including yours truly, can remember playing soldier when they were kids. Some play soldier as adults. Our guest this morning is author and actor Schroeder, whose new book, Man of War, My Adventures in the World of Historical Reenactment, details how he helps recreate bloodless battles from the last 2 millennia. And Charlie, for a guy who's had a lot of death scenes, you look pretty good.
Thank you very much. Yes, I die with grace. Yes.
You know, this has got to be an interesting little bit of work. Is this more of a hobby or a legitimate gig?
Definitely it was a hobby. I mean, and it's a hobby for the people who actually do the reenactments themselves. I mean, nobody's really getting paid. I mean, sometimes they're hired as, extras in History Channel, documentaries or whatever. But this is something that really comes out of their own pocket. It's a lot of money to kit up, as they say, to find the right armor, the right hat, the right weapon, and to go out there and do battle.
Now, this is something a lot of people are really almost fanatic about when it comes down to the attention to detail.
Yeah, absolutely. What you have is kind of a group of reenactors that are called hardcore reenactors, and they really take particular care to make sure that they have the right buttons and the right, threading, and, oh, well, you wouldn't wear shoes that have shoelaces back then. They have to be buckled. I went to one reenactment where I brought some old shoes that I had had, and they had shoelaces, and they said, well, they have a top seam, but they'll be okay for the weekend. I was just I was an embedded reporter, so they let me slide on it.
Oh, okay. So in the book, you've taken a kind of a tongue-in-cheek look at this whole episode, this I guess industry, if you will.
Yeah, I think that it's important to do it in a comedic way because, for one thing, I think that's just where my personality lies. So it would be hard for me to be truthful without including some humor into it. But a lot of reenactors they take what they do very seriously, but they're also willing to sort of poke fun at themselves while they do it. And I think that I never wanted to make fun of anyone who does it because it's their hobby and it's their passion.
Sure.
But I poke fun at myself because I'm a guy that didn't know anything, and I'm trying to learn it by, going off into battle like this.
So when you started this, was it as a part, or did you just say, hey, this is something that was fascinating?
Well, I actually was an actor, and I worked at a Renaissance fair when I was like 21 years old, and that's the first time that I actually saw historical reenactors. And so I was always very curious about what it was that attracted someone to a specific time. Like, why do people like Elizabethan England, or why do people like Rome? And then to take that next step, why do they want to dress up like that? So that question stayed with me for many years, and so I decided to investigate it in this way.
One of the things I always found interesting is, where do you go to find these clothes? Do you go to a studio, or
that's a great question.
Bits and pieces.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it really depends on the era that you recreate. For example, in colonial reenactments, they're handmade, and they have a real industry, and that's their job to make these, uniforms. Civil War, it's a much bigger hobby, and so they're mass-produced. For Roman reenacting, which people do, believe it or not, they outsource it to India, and the armor's made in India. So, it really sort of depends on which era you're recreating.
Well, you got a lot of funny bits in the book. Give me your take on perhaps one of your funniest moments.
Oh, well, I think, for me at least, it was one of the things that I enjoyed the most, and I thought that was really funny and enjoyable at the same time, was something called the Big Row. And this has nothing to do with military reenactment. It's these guys, and they row a cargo boat down the river, New York riverways. We did the St. Lawrence River, and it took 4 days to go 64 miles. So it's sort of funny and sad at the same time. But it was, it's great. We showed up. People didn't know who we are. They thought we were pirates. We would show up at campgrounds and stuff like that. So just the look on people's faces, wondering like, where did these guys come from, was very humorous.
Now, you said there were two different camps of sorts of guys who do this. The ones who were really into it for the historical value, and the other guys.
Yeah, some people do it just because they want to get away. Modern life isn't very fulfilling to a lot of people sometimes, So they want to get away. They want to leave their smartphone at home, leave the computer at home. They want to, disconnect from the internet or whatever the case may be. And so there's that sense of, just letting it all go away, and then the camaraderie that you have with your fellow campers, because a lot of this is about camping and being filthy, to be perfectly honest. So, they might not be totally into the history, but they'd like to just get away from, the modern world.
Wow, interesting stuff. You mentioned, too, the reaction you get from people who watch these reenactments. This is a big deal in a lot of places.
It is, and I caution people that not to take everything as a historically accurate, recreation. Sometimes these events aren't anything like what actually happened at a specific battle site. So, look into your history before you think that what you're watching is exactly what happened. Because obviously you can't do exactly what happened, because people would die. You know?
Sure,
So you have
sure.
to be, you have to take it all with a grain of salt sometimes.
And then, of course, there are the little things, when you're a kid, somebody shoots you and you say, well, I'm not dead, and you keep running. Does that happen on the...
Without a doubt, yes. I mean, when I first started doing this, I tried to play by the rules. It's like, if you see a burst of fire come out of a musket, you're supposed to die or whatever, and I would die immediately. And then I realized nobody else was dying around me. Everybody, wanted to keep playing along, and so I decided that, I was just going to ignore the rules and just continue to fight on and load my musket and hopefully not singe my eyebrows or something like that.
Wow, fascinating stuff. Do you get, as you're doing these things, do you get any encouragement or interaction from people who were there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. There's nothing... Reenactors are very enthusiastic. They're so happy to have you along to play along, because they love either history or that era or the hobby so much that they just want more and more people to come along. And so people were just more than happy to have me there. And,
Wow.
of course, I'm ignorant about most of what was going on, so it was a learning opportunity, too, so people could educate me about, like, what happened in the past.
It's a great little interactive thing to do with the folks who come out.
Absolutely.
What do you hope people come away with from your book?
I hope that people walk away enjoying history as much as I do, because history is something that I've completely fallen in love with, and I don't think that it needs to be dry and boring and dusty and dates and what have you. I hope that people just become history buffs like me.
Charlie Schroeder, author, actor, and comedian. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.